Good afternoon and welcome to CC Gurukul lecture. In continuation with the series on sociological theories, in today's lecture we are going to discuss on a very important methodology, qualitative methodology in sociology, that's ethnomethodology. So we'll try to understand what is ethnomethodology and the contribution that Garfinkel did in terms of developing a methodology for studying social problems and the society. So let us first understand what is ethnomethodology. Ethnomethodology is a perspective within sociology which focuses on the way people make sense of their everyday world. So here we are trying to develop a method by which we understand the society from the perspective of the people themselves. What is the meaning that they attach? Why do they behave in a particular manner? So that method emerges from the social interaction of the people themselves. Ethnomethodology focuses on the world of social facts as accomplished or co-created through people's interpretative world. So here we go back to Durkheim and the positivist school, where he said that the social facts are out there to be observed, to be compared. Garfinkel turns the table around and says that social facts are not given, it is constructed. How do we know what is the importance of any object or any particular fact? It is only when individual in the process of interaction attaches a symbolic meaning to it. So social reality is not out there. It are constructed. So both reality and social facts are constructed, produced and organized through the mundane action and circumstances of everyday life. It empirically explores how people accomplish, produce and reproduce a sense of social structure. Ethnomethodology comes from three words: ethno, method plus logy. So what does ethnomethodology means? Ethno means members of the social, cultural, ethnic group. So ethno means basically ethnic people. Method refers to the thing people routinely do, create or recreate regularities of order or practices, and logy means the logic of or study of these methods. So ethnomethodology means the study of members, that's people, methods for producing recognizable social order. So every social reality has a structure, has an interaction, and the method by which we capture that reality is termed as ethnomethodology. The methodology was founded by Harold Garfinkel, a student of American sociologist Talcott Parsons in the 1950s and 1960s. Garfinkel actually criticized Parsons' action theory to illustrate how ethnomethodology departs from the conventional social theory to develop a methodology for studying social life. Now, if we go back to our lectures on Parsons, we see Parsons was part of the interpretative sociology initiated by Weber. He was kind of an option that again that social reality is not objectively out there to be observed and studied. It has to be studied in terms of the subjective meaning assigned. But what is the difference here is that Parsons assumed that the social action would create an ordered as society. So order was here assumed. Garfinkel would kind of consider even social order as being constructed, and therefore it could be more important to focus on inequality and disorder. So ethnomethodology was popularly assigned with Garfinkel, and the text that this term becomes popular was the Studies in Ethnomethodology, published in 1967 by Garfinkel. However, the theory of ethnomethodology is actually taken from School's phenomenological construction of Weber's interpretative sociology. So basically, it's a kind of a more advanced version of interpretative sociology of Weber. Only distinction that we make in social science and sociology is between a branch or a school which was focusing on objective study of society versus the other which was focusing on the subjective interpretation. Now, within interpretative sociology, we have symbolic interactionism, we have the construction of everyday life as a play, Goffman's dramaturgy, and then we have Garfinkel's ethnomethodology. They are kind of more or less belonging to the school of interpretative sociology. Now, if we look into ethnomethodology as a method in social science, we see that it is a progress of the ways in which we study social reality. So, three core differences between traditional sociology and ethnomethodology are: number one, while traditional sociology usually offers an analysis of society, taking the objective truth of the social world for granted, ethnomethodology is concerned with the procedure by which that social order is produced and shared. So, the task is not just to give the detail of an objective reality. The task of a social scientist is to find out why that social order is constructed and how it impacts the people who are a part of that social order. The second difference from traditional sociology and ethnomethodology is that while traditional sociology provides description of the social setting, which is different from actual description, so it can be contested. Now, a sociologist can define, say, a religion as functional. However, in a society, religion can lead to conflict. So, the description is different from the empirical reality. The ethnomethodology does is to describe the actual procedures that individuals use in the description of those settings. So, in a particular way, why is religion functional or why does it create a conflict would be understood by the way in which people will describe that reality. So, the setting will change, people's descriptions will change, and therefore, they cannot be a universal objective reality. The third distinction is that structural functionalist research program methodologically impose pre-existing analytical schema on their field of study. So, they have a kind of an understanding that they are certain taken for granted assumption that society is functional, the taken for granted that people would sacrifice the individual need for the welfare of the collective. So, you are already assuming a social order and then explaining that reality with reference to the assumption. Symbolic interactionism assumes the truthful basis of the symbols being interpreted by actors party to social schemes. So, even in symbolic interactionism, there is kind of an understanding that these symbols are positive, these are kind of important or functional for the actors. So, there is some amount of hidden assumptions in these theories. In comparison, ethnomethodology specifically avoids employing these types of pragmatic assumption in its description of social science. So, there is nothing that will come in from the social scientist. Whatever will be discussed or whatever is kind of part of the theory would come in from the people themselves, from the social reality themselves. So, a particular action can be defined by a symbolic interaction by assuming that the meaning would be so and so. But in the case of ethnomethodology, the meaning will be only what the people who are actors who are part of the interactions are giving. In contrast to traditional sociological forms of inquiry, the ethnomethodological perspective does not make methodological appeals to outside assumption regarding the characterization of social reality. So, there is no kind of an assumption. The social scientist or a sociologist is like a blank slate. Whatever is kind of understood is in terms of the actual interpretation of the meaning, symbols, action by the people themselves. So, ethnomethodology emerged from School's phenomenology. So, now we will try to understand how phenomenology and ethnomethodology are kind of different, but they are both part of the interpretative sociology. Phenomenology comes in first from School's idea, and then it was further developed by Garfinkel. So, phenomenology is a methodology of philosophical research initiated in 1900 by mathematician Edmund Husserl. It was kind of further taken into phenomenological psychology by Husserl, and then in sociology it was developed by Schools. It kind of gives an understanding that all objects exist because people perceive and construct them as such. So, if we are kind of calling a piece of object as a stone, it is the way the people has perceived it and shared the meaning of it among the members. The object of such an analysis is the meaningful lived world of everyday life or life world. So, there was a whole idea that language as a means of communication enabled the people to ascribe meaning to all the objects, for say what we call as a flower, or what we call as a stone, or what we call as a tree, is all the development of human capacity to think and assign meaning to these objects. So, this was known as phenomenological sociology. Coe's beliefs were based on the idea that all human reflection is grounded in the mundane world of lived experiences or Lebenswelt. This world of lived experience exists as the product of actors, but it is taken for granted and therefore unnoticed. Without reflection of this constitutive process, we mistakenly come to see reality as objective. Scott's goal was to describe the fundamental features of the social world as it is constituted and understood by ordinary people through their everyday routine. So, that is how the phenomenology started the initiation that social reality is constructed, and as individuals studying society, we need to not go in with our assumption, and we are not trying to discover objective truth, but our task is to understand the way in which people are responding, interacting through their shared meaning, through their communications, through their interaction. Now, after understanding what is ethnomethodology, the origin of ethnomethodology, let us understand some of the characteristics. According to social scientists, there are three distinctive characteristics of ethnomethodology. Number one, it aims to know how people construct meaning or definition of a situation as a version of symbolic interaction. So, its whole idea is, say, two individuals are in an argument. Now, how are they going to respond is not only depending on the language, it also depends on the background in terms of the habitus in which the individual is located, the socialization, the background, everything, which will then define why a particular behavior is being done. The second characteristic is the definition of the situation emerge from how persons announce and impart sense-making perceptions and perspective to one another. Ethnomethodology is said to be individualistic. Now, this is again a major break from the traditional sociology where much of the focus was on the collective, and it was assumed that all members of the society would by default behave in one particular manner. Now, the difference is that when ethnomethodology looks into social interaction, the focus is on individual's behavior, on how the individual is going to perceive the reality and accordingly respond to it. Ethnomethodology is understood to have emerged as a critique of traditional ways of doing sociology. So, as we have already discussed, that if we look into the discipline of sociology from the days of Auguste Comte to the 90s, 50s, 60s, a lot of transitions take place from understanding society as an objective reality to understanding subjectivity, and then even the subjectivity is dependent on individuals' own understanding of the social reality. Ethnomethodology's goal is to document the method and practices through which society's members make sense of their world. Ethnomethodology's field of investigation is the social practices of real people in real setting and the method by which these people produce and maintain a shared sense of social order. First time through is a phrase which is used by Garfinkel. It implies the practice of attempting to describe any social activity regardless of its routine or mundane appearance as it were happening for the very first time. So, even if we are say kind of looking into a very regular everyday activity of say going for a walk, it is not going to be ways that this has already been studied and there is a reason why people are going for a walk, but it's going to be taken as a first time activity, and therefore the attempt would be to understand people's interpretation of that activity. Now, another concept which is very important when he is trying to talk about everyday reality method of capturing the everyday reality is the concept of accounts. The study of ordinary society reveals how individuals work hard to maintain consistency, order and meaning in their life. So, the entire focus of individual's life is to ensure that there is a consistency or there is a kind of a meaning why we live a life, why we do a particular work, why we kind of acquire certain knowledge. So, Garfinkel wanted to understand the method people use to make sense of their world, emphasized language, that is verbal description, as the tool in which this is done. So, how do we kind of express the meaning? It is only through verbal communication. In this way, people use their accounts to construct a sense of reality. Now, this account is not the deposit of currency in the bank. This is your own estimate of the activities that you have done in all the language that you have accumulated, the understanding of social reality that you have accumulated, and on that basis, you have a perspective of the social reality. So, the account of the people reflect how social order is possible. It kind of refers to the way in which actor explains specific situation and place emphasis on indexicality. That is, members' accounts are tied to particular context and situation. Accounts are social creation and construct built from past interaction. So, we have kind of, just as we can put in currency in the bank and the account keeps on increasing, similarly, as we live our life, this accounts is getting accumulated, and therefore when we are interacting, we often say that those who are aged, those who are the elderly have more experience because the account of the lived reality is much more than the younger generation. So they can have a different sense of the reality than the younger person. Ethnomethodologists devote a lot of attention to analyzing people's accounts as well as to the ways in which accounts are offered and accepted or rejected by other. So we kind of say develop an understanding or a perspective depending on the account that we have accumulated. Now another person's account would be opposite to my account, and therefore there could be a question of a conflict of perspectives. Another work is common sense world. Garfinkel believed that the goal of the sociologist is to reveal the unknown background features of everyday activities and to treat as problematic what is taken for granted in order to understand common sense everyday world. Defining an event as an occurrence in the common sense world includes viewing events as objective fact, viewing the meaning of event as product of socially standardized process of naming, reification and idealization of person's stream of experience. So we kind of have a sense of how the method kind of developed in terms of shifting from the social scientist perspective of certain assumed reality to giving significance to social actors themselves, and this is the contribution of Garfinkel in terms of developing a methodology, a qualitative methodology for studying social reality. With this, I come to an end of this lecture. Thank you.